everybody. Welcome back to the Bosshole Chronicles. This is your co-host, Sarah Best. And John and I had a great interview. We're excited to share with you today our episode featuring Kurt Greene. He's a Master Vistage Chair. We really talked a lot about employee engagement and retention. These are subjects that keep leaders up at night. We know that to be true. We talked about what to do, what not to do. But in particular, we're going to emphasize this idea of developing a connection with your employee. So Kurt has some great ideas to share with us about that. Just in short, Kurt is the president and founder of Aero G Consulting, LLC, but he's done a wealth of things, 35 years of experience in ops and HR leadership roles for companies like Pfizer, Procter & Gamble, and GE. He has an MBA in human resources. He has an organizational management degree from Vanderbilt University. He's also a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. There he became a mechanical engineer. So his talents and interests and education are varied and important. But he is a Master Vistage Chair. I think you'll find his insights from working with scores of leaders quite insightful. And he's also personal about it too. We really look forward to digging into this episode today.
The Bosshole Chronicles are brought to you by Real Good Ventures, a talent optimization firm helping organizations diagnose their most critical people and execution issues with world-class analytics. Make sure to check out all the resources in the show notes and be sure to follow us and share your feedback. Enjoy today's episode.
Hey there, Kurt. It is so great to have you today on the Bosshole Chronicles. Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah and John. Humbled and honored to be here.
Wow, this promises to be a particularly timely and important episode. I think our clients and certainly people in the workforce and leadership continue to struggle with talent engagement, talent retention. These are topics that keep people up at night. You, with your wealth of experience and exposure to many kinds of leaders, having been a leader yourself, you have some thoughts to share about what people are doing right. So when it comes to talent engagement, and let's just be honest, we're in the most unique time as far as employment and in the marketplace.
Yeah.
When, for example, the labor force participation rate is low. We don't have we don't have all the people who are of working age out there in the workforce. Unemployment is low. It's really important that we keep good talent and we do what we can. So you have some insights about what people are doing right, what they're not doing so right and could be doing better. So Let me turn it over to you and you can help us dig into what should we be thinking about.
So I'd say first at a macro level, what I see folks doing is they are doubling down on more of the same things and wondering why it's not working.
Okay.
Got it.
So, oh my gosh, we're really having trouble finding talent. So let's put out bigger signs. Let's put them in more places. Let's put more fishing poles in more fishing holes and pray harder for fish to impale themselves on our hooks. And it's not working that way. I think in my experience thus far, there are a lot of resources out there, but people are uncomfortable embracing the softer side of what it's going to take to re-engage this workforce in the era that we're in. And in my view, it has everything to do with attention from the boss.
Okay. I love that idea that they're uncomfortable with the softer side of it. Say more about that, would you? I mean, I know what you're talking about, but I know our listeners would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So it's one way to look at it is for bosses to be more human and vulnerable.
Okay.
And it's about attention. So I think I've heard this on y'all's podcast, but there's such critical value to having one-to-ones with your employees.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, Marcus Buckingham in his book talks about, one of his 9 lies about work. He talks about work-life balance matters the most. And the truth, that's a myth. And the truth behind that is that love in work is what matters most. What I love is when I was working big corporate jobs, you can never say the L word at work.
That's
Right.
Was that in Jack Welch's
eighth
text at all? No, probably
What's
not.
that?
Jack Welch, was
Jack
that in
Welch's,
his work at all? And nothing
Yeah.
against it, but I
Yeah.
mean, that was a different mindset. Go ahead.
In his whole session C, cut the bottom 10%.
Right.
Yeah, I've lived through that.
No love in that. That's right. Go ahead.
That's right. And this is my 8th year as a Vistage chair, and we get to say the L word all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great to hear members tell each other that, and to hear it and say it as a leader of leaders in an intimate setting like a Vistage group. So I feel like very strongly that the one tool in every manager's toolbox that is so unbelievably underutilized and overlooked is the one-to-one meeting. Having regular one-to-one meetings, but the parts that I believe and that I see my clients and colleagues struggling with is the softer side of the one-to-one. And going deep and going into the danger zone of kind of these uncomfortable, awkward conversations and not knowing how to do that. And I think that's part of the biggest challenges that managers struggle with. Where do I get the tools to be comfortable with those kinds of conversations? And I usually start people off with how to answer that with the simple concept that your attention is the biggest gift you can give anybody. So all you have to do is shut your mouth and listen.
Right. Well, I was thinking how many times I've heard leaders say, I don't have time for that. It's very evident. I don't have time for that. And I get it. Looking at your background, Kurt, people might be surprised to know, well, not surprised, but they might be impressed to know, you graduated from West Point. You've been not only a senior level HR leader, an ops leader, you've been a leader in many blue chip companies, big companies, where that was the mentality. It's like, hey, get her done or get out the way. Where did you learn about love? Where did you get to cultivate that as part of your leadership style?
I don't know that I learned it anywhere as much as I just I had one of the most tremendous jobs and assignments ever was starting up a new factory for an international company, and I was employee number 5 on the senior team. It was about a $300 million investment, about 250 employees, completely overhauling this old polluted site into this world-class factory over about a 3-year period. And long story short, I got to hire an HR team. One of the members I hired, it was so minor of an experience, I guess. We were getting into our little huddle room, our conference room, and there's all this electronics, the spider speakerphone with all the technology and various cords and charging cords and cables and everything. And it was our little space. It was where my team gets to meet. And I was just kind of walked in and just I must have had some kind of look on my face about the wires being in disarray. And she just looks at me. I cleared it out of the way so we could have a nice meeting. And she says, "I'm sorry about that. You hate that, don't you?" And even today, I get a little bit choked up about it because she saw me and she accepted me who I was. And at that moment, we were not boss and employee. We were not supervisor and, minion. We were just two humans about to have a equally important and impactful conversation with each other about the shared goal that we have of starting up this wonderful new factory. So that's where it really started to turn for me, I think, is when I was like, work and relationships can be way different than the way that the big companies, in my experience anyway, tend to approach them. We've all had really nice working relationships with people, I think, but that's when it really became emotional for me, where I felt the emotion from another person. And so that led to somewhere the other answer to your question is I got exposed to these 4 questions from Katherine Schafler. She's a psychologist. Are you guys familiar with these 4 questions?
I don't know. I got to hear what they are.
Yeah.
And we will be right back.
With employee disengagement at its highest level in 9 years, your company can't afford to miss the mark when it comes to optimizing your hiring, management, and team performance practices. At its lowest level, employee turnover costs you $11,000 per person. And those are dollars you can easily save with the right set of people analytics. Real Good Ventures is a talent optimization consultancy specializing in world-class analytics specific to your people and the critical role they play within your organization. Gain confidence in your hiring practices. Keep the boss holes from driving your talent away. Design your teams for flawless execution and create a culture that offers meaning and fulfillment. Real Good Ventures has a family of validated diagnostic tools specific to the human aspect of business, because we know that all business issues are people issues. Visit us today at www.realgoodventures.com and bring meaning and fulfillment back into your workplace.
Okay, let's get back to the program.
So she talks about in every relationship you're in, each person in the relationship is looking for answers to these 4 questions. Do you see me? Do you care that I'm here? Am I enough for you, or do I need to be better in some way? And can I tell that I'm special to you by the way that you look at me?
Those are great.
Yeah.
So in my seminars on being a good boss, and specifically on the topic of one-to-ones, we start with, these are the questions that your people are looking for you to answer with every interaction that you have with them. How are you doing? And, dog people love dogs. And if you guys, anyone who has a dog, you love your dog because when you walk in the door, your dog is asking and answering these questions with resounding yeses every time. Right?
So
you walk
true.
in the door and your dog is saying, I see you and I care that you're here and you are so much better I'm better because of you. And I can tell, right? I can tell my dog, Scout, I can tell by the way she looks at me that she cares that I'm there.
Absolutely.
I have to tell you this. Walking in the entrance to our home, there is a keychain or a plaque, and on it says, I want to be the person my dog thinks I am.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, that is so true. That is so true.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much in there. And if I remember correctly, in the world of predictive index, you are an analyzer. Is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So for our listeners, we would describe an analyzer as a pretty intense, big picture thinker who also manages the details and brings efficiency and diligence and discipline and gets, what done, but does it right. That does that sound about accurate?
Guilty as charged.
And I'm thinking about, wow, you're the kind of person who naturally is adapting all the time. You're giving up, most likely, your need to get it done and get it done fast and get it done right for the benefit of the relationship. Because at the end of the day, that holds more weight. That contributes more to the better outcome. So that adaptation, what's that like for you? Is that easy, moderate, or difficult?
Difficult.
Yeah.
I've had to learn to let turds flow through the creek all the time. Right. I have learned to realize that perfect is not healthy for anybody, and that good enough is good enough, and that my standards typically are not gonna be good for most people, and it's not. I've just had to let that go.
Right.
And to look for the good. Maybe this is a little too much transparency, but my wife and I were thinking about having kids, and she was not afraid to express that. I'm worried that no child of yours will be good enough.
Wow.
Because of those standards. So that was a good wake up call for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and I know you're not alone. I talk to leaders and people all the time who have both the gift and the challenge of perfectionism. Like they have such high standards for themselves and for other people.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, most people aren't going to work as hard as they are. They aren't going to achieve. They just don't see the outcome in the same way. And that's difficult. But you've created, I think, a great opportunity for anybody listening to follow a formula. And it's not, I just have to let it go. Like, screw that. I'm done. I don't care. No, it's not that kind of letting go. It's a different kind of letting go.
I want to clarify my little analogy with the creek, right? The thing I've learned is that I don't have to fish every turd out of the creek.
Okay.
Okay.
Right? It's okay. It's okay.
Turds are a part of life.
Turds are,
Yeah.
turds are in creeks. It happens.
Some are worth your attention and others aren't.
That's right.
I can't believe we're talking about. I think I've got our title for this episode, but I'm not quite sure how to weave that in. But Kurt, I think you bring up a really powerful and first of all, thank you for your transparency. I think that reflects how you have grown and evolved and the wisdom you have gained in terms of, you're still who you are, but you have learned to adapt and understand that self-awareness is very powerful in helping you show up differently, whether it's to your kids or your clients, your group members. But Sarah and I have talked about this. You think about it. I mean, as parents, what parent doesn't, to some degree at some point, sort of impose who they are on their kids? It's like, well, why don't you want this? And how are you? I just had my one son, our eldest son is an analyzer. We were talking, we were on a trip recently, and he goes, I was talking about work, and I said, how great it was and how much I love working. He goes, Dad, not everybody loves their work as much as you do. And I said, well, that makes me sad. And it also gives me hope that we can help that. But don't you think that even boss holes, or managers who stray into the boss hole zone are almost imposing, trying to will upon their direct reports, this is how you need to be. You need to be, focused and motivated and passionate about this stuff because that's the way we do it here. And not taking into account every single one of those individuals are different and need to be treated differently. That's when you talked about that, that's immediately where my head went.
Yeah. Buckingham also talks about one of his other myths is that people need feedback. This is kind of where all this comes full circle. His truth in response to that is people don't need feedback. They need attention. They need your attention.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's in the form of just paying positive, all of the listening skills we learn in Supervisor 101 school, about being present and not distracted and all those things.
Would you agree? I'd love to get your perspective on this. One of the things we discuss with our clients is the fact that they may inadvertently be creating or forcing managers into the boss hole zone just by virtue of how many direct reports they give them. So and we agree, feedback and time and attention, let's just put it in those terms that you've shared with us. Time and attention is what people need. But if I've got 18 direct reports, there's no way I can do that. What's your perspective on that?
Well, when you get as high as 18, you might start to see a bell curve of who your high and low performers are.
Yeah.
The other mistake that I see folks making, and I've made it a few times myself, is that we spend all our time with our low performers trying to coach them up. And so the short answer to your question is, if you got to pick who to spend time with, you spend time with your high and middle performers. It's in my opinion, it's kind of like the chicken blank way out. To just ignore people and let them wither on the vine, because I don't condone that by any stretch, but at least 45 minutes with your high and mid performers and only 20 minutes with your low performers. I mean, no one says you got to spend 90 minutes a week with every employee. Right. It's about quality, not quantity. And the sharp folks that I see and work with are the ones who are able to have really powerful questions, really powerful one-to-ones in pretty short period of time. I don't know if I have any secret magic formulas for that. I do know that Peter Bregman is a guy I used to listen to his podcast fairly regularly, but he's an executive coach, and every session is 30 minutes.
Mm.
And I'm an executive coach for my Vistage members, and we do 90 minutes, and half the time that's not enough time. So if it's high quality time, it doesn't have to be a whole lot. And if you got 18 employees, it's about connecting. It's not about your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. So we've talked about not doubling down on the stuff you're already doing, expecting it to magically produce some great level of engagement that hasn't been there before. Let's do more of that. Let's attract more people by doing the same stuff. You've talked about focusing on the one-to-ones and the softer side, the relationship, the connection with people. You've talked about people need attention. You offered up too, Katherine Schafler's 4 questions. We'll make sure we put a link to those in the show notes. What else you got for us? How do we work better to retain and attract good talent?
So to get Kurt's answer to that question, be sure to tune in next Tuesday for part 2 of our interview with Kurt Greene. What a great session today. Thank you, Kurt, for your input. Make sure you go to the show notes to find those links and the list of those 4 amazing questions. And tune in for part 2 next Tuesday. We'll see you then.